Hi, everyone. You are listening to Scream Girl Squad. This is Jill.
And this is Corinne. Wait.
Well, welcome, everybody. We are going to talk to you about scary stories to tell in the dark.
The movie.
Not
the classic book series.
The book series.
So, there was a whole lot of excitement on the interwebs from people Jill and I's approximate age in 2018 when they first announced that Guillermo del Toro was producing an adaptation of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Everyone our age owned these books or had read them or had seen them.
Was traumatized by the illustrations.
Very much so.
And I don't know how, if adaptation is even the right word, because it's not really. It's more that
of a retelling?
Yeah, or...
Is that the better way of saying that? Or a
what's on the receiving
homage?
end of an inspiration? Yeah, a homage. An homage. And I play the eponymous hero. Yes, that's what it was. It was an homage to...
Is it homage or homage?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's like how... Is it croissant or croissant?
Okay.
Regardless of how it's pronounced, you couldn't really do a straight-up adaptation of these stories that was longer than a minute and a half. Because they're super duper short.
We grabbed the books and looked them up. And I was surprised. I remember them being so much longer.
Yeah. But I think back then we read at a rate of 5 words an hour.
But I think I read them junior high.
Oh.
Maybe younger.
I was pretty young. Our friend Joe had them. And I remember reading them in his backyard.
Okay. Maybe I was younger then.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like before you came to public school. So that was 6th grade, right?
They were written in the 80s.
I probably read both.
But yeah, so they're super, super short. And Jill and I were talking about how it's kind of like what Disney did with the Grimm's fairy tales, because the Grimm's fairy tales are insanely short. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to stretch them out and add some meat to them. So what they did is they took a handful of stories from Alvin Schwartz's collections and sort of pulled inspiration from them and wove them together in a interconnected way. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the age group that was most excited for this movie to come out is well above this movie's actual target audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This felt like the Goosebumps movies or, what was that TV show, Erie, Indiana? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a little above that, but not much.
Yeah.
I would say junior high age would definitely be the target audience.
Not to say that it's not worth watching as an adult.
No.
Just know that you will not be scared.
Yeah. It was still fun, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if cartoonish people don't terrify you...
You're probably going to be okay.
There were definitely some scary moments. So we'll talk about them.
Yeah.
But all in all, meh.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and give a brief spoiler-free synopsis of, which is so hard. I don't even know how I would boil this down.
Teenagers out causing a ruckus on Halloween end up at a haunted house and bring home a haunted book.
Yes.
Then things happen.
And that haunted book is full of stories that are reminiscent and share titles with the Alvin Schwartz collection.
Yes.
This one's going to be kind of a tough one to rate, only because of the scale that we use. So Jill and I always use 2 scales. The first one is our fun rating, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And we always use something that we like eating, usually something that we enjoyed eating during the movie. And usually that scale is pretty easy because Jill's roommate has, made something amazing and delicious. And I'm like, yeah, we're definitely going to base it off whatever Rachel cooked. The other scale is our fright rating. Same deal, 1 to 5. And we use something from the movie as our method of rating instead of generic gold stars. And in this one, Number one, there's a whole lot of different, like, scary elements that they were going for, so I don't even know what we would use for the fright rating. More importantly, we have never stuffed our faces to the level that we did today. And it's just going to get worse because the holidays are coming. And that's the season where I go crazy baking, you go crazy baking, everyone brings food to my house.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're welcome.
I was talking in the car about how I'm prepping to put on my holiday 15. And it's not even a joke.
It's just your winter bod.
Yep.
Prepping for hibernation.
Yeah, you gotta have that extra insulation to run around with.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we ate bagels and chocolate and
Christmas candy.
Chips and dip and just had a very well-balanced dinner.
Yeah, this was our dinner, folks.
Mm-hmm.
We are grown women.
That's what you do when you go to the grocery store hungry and it's a Tuesday. Yes. So what was your favorite thing that we ate tonight?
Probably the Dove peppermint dark chocolate.
Yeah, those were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Even George liked those because they made good wrappers for him to play with. So, a scale of 1 to 5 peppermint dark chocolates. How much did you enjoy watching scary stories to tell in the dark?
I'm going to be a little generous because I really just enjoyed the experience of watching it with you, and I had wanted to see it because of the nostalgia factor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with 3.
Yeah, 3. 3 sounds fair.
Yeah.
And we also, for those of you who are faithful listeners, hi, Jill's mom. We in the beginning, we didn't talk about the movie while we were watching it. And we learned that it's better if we let ourselves.
Yes.
And we talked all the way through this one, and I think that definitely helped bump it up at least half a star for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think if we had not been able to talk through this movie, I would have liked it way less.
Yeah, it would have been a little problematic in the theater. Now, for fright rating, what do we go with? Scary stories? I don't know. Haunted books?
Haunted books. That's good.
Haunted books.
Yeah.
All right. Scale of 1 to 5 haunted books. How scary was this film?
Like 1.5?
Yeah.
I got a little nervous a couple times.
Ugh. There was one scene in particular that we'll talk about.
That was a whole star all by itself.
Yeah.
And then a half for, like, that other part that made me a little nervous.
Okay, 1.5. But this is what I'm talking about earlier. Like, we're the wrong demographic for this movie because Jill and I are laughing about the stuff that probably scared the crap out of small children. And a friend of ours took her son to see this, and one part scared him so badly that he asked if they could go home. And they did.
A lot of times we touch on the cast. I wasn't really familiar with the cast.
I recognized one person. It was the main character's dad. He was played by Hank from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and he's been in some other things as well, so I recognized him.
But the majority of the cast are supposed to be 16, 17 years old, and
they did well.
Yeah, and they looked their actual age, and I have never seen any of them in anything, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, which I like. I always feel like I'm better immersed if I don't actually recognize the people from other stuff.
Or if I right off the bat know who they are. But if I spend a whole movie trying to figure out where I know that person from rather than paying attention to the plot, which I will do, then it kind of ruins the whole thing.
That's why thank goodness for IMDb and smartphones.
Seriously. It's a really great thing about watching movies at home.
Because otherwise I will be distracted the whole movie. I need to be able to, like, put that away in a box.
Seriously.
Well, yeah, so we can't really talk about the cast, and I am excited to pick apart some of the scenes that did make me uncomfortable versus the ones that didn't.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and dive in.
Yeah.
Spoilers. We need a new spoiler sound effect that's like splashes. Because we always say dive in. But the bad thing about a splash is you don't know if that sound came from a swimming pool or a toilet.
That's what I was thinking. Plunk. And then I was like, that noise usually means not diving in a pool or dropping the kids off at the pool.
Things Corinne isn't sure she'll leave in.
Poop jokes. Hey, but we have to tell some of those.
Hey.
It's plot points.
It's true. Like right off the top, too.
Yeah.
That's like one of the very first things. Why don't you go ahead and take us through that, Jill?
So the movie starts out with some eerie speech about how stories are real and they have real power and you must respect the story and blah, blah, blah.
Jill says blah, 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 and I'm over there nodding like, yes, this is gospel.
I mean, no, stories are real. They have real power, but it's just the way it happened in context with this movie that made me go blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like what they said, that they have the power to hurt and they have the power to heal. Because I write horror for catharsis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they give the same speech again at the end of the movie, which reminded me of, what was the movie we watched a couple weeks ago that did the same thing?
The Haunting of Hill House.
Did the same thing. And so it kind of did that tie-in. And because it was based on a book, it completely makes sense. But starts out, it's Halloween. They're showing like Main Street of this small town. Everybody's got their jack-o'-lanterns up. The radio DJ talks about how it's the season of the witch. And the radio DJ was totally... So pretty quickly you realize this movie takes place in the 70s.
1968.
Which I really, really appreciated because I think that was a creepy time.
Yeah.
And I love... As much fun as, like, the Unfriended Dark Web movie was, I also love scary movies that don't have that technology element. And so right off the bat, I was like, yes, this is going to be one of those, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's, like, nice and refreshing to not have that technology element. And the radio DJ was definitely trying to be that really famous DJ. I want to say the Wolfman. Like, every radio DJ from that time period does this same voice.
Okay.
And he was, like, a famous DJ at the time.
So that's why he sounds familiar.
Yes.
Like, I'm trying to figure out who voiced him, but I think he was just generically familiar.
Every radio DJ from that time period does this voice. And I want to say it was a real DJ. Yeah, Wolfman Jack.
That's who he's based on, or that's who voiced him?
That's who he's based on.
Oh, okay.
So he was a really famous DJ, like, all through, like, the 60s and 70s. And seriously, like, anytime a movie has a DJ from that time period, even not from that time period, I feel like they do that Wolfman voice. And he just talked like that all the time.
Was he active when we were kids, or is this something that you know because you're more steeped in films from this era than I was?
That
one.
Well, and I think the first time I realized was watching American Graffiti, because he's definitely... And I don't remember if the character is Wolfman Jack on American Graffiti, or if they just talk about him. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, and this radio DJ's voice kind of gives us a little bit of background color for the whole movie. Yeah,
like he's there anytime anybody's in the car.
Yeah.
He pops up quite a bit. So anyway, I liked that Wolfman Jack reference.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I was a little bummed, though, I feel like I need to point this out, that the soundtrack was terrible. There was no good 60s and 70s music, and I feel like there should have been. Yeah,
they played Season of the Witch, which was totally on the nose, because that was the term that the radio DJ used to describe Halloween.
And then that was it.
Yeah. So, probably a budget thing.
Yeah, probably.
Like, when Kevin Smith made Clerks, he had to pawn he had to sell his comic book collection to pay for just the music rights.
Yeah.
Super worth it, because the Clerks soundtrack is amazing.
Fabulous. Yes.
But, so I'm guessing that they probably burned all their money on special effects and didn't have any left over for music.
I'm sure. But it would have made the movie a little bit better for me.
Yeah, like last week when we watched Annabelle Comes Home, that was easily one of the best parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And so the movie's like cutting around all over the place. Like it's clearly in the middle of Vietnam. The main girl's dad is watching like Vietnam footage on the television. Mm-hmm. People are talking about how Nixon is running for president. Mm-hmm. It's all happening at the same time.
Yeah, a bunch of kids in Letterman's jackets kind of like spill out of an army recruiting station, and they're all pumped, and one of them is like, I'm going to Nam! And
yeah. They're kind of doing that flash around, like, we're going to show you people that are important, but not tell you they're important kind of thing in the beginning of the movie. So there's like the girl who walks in and her dad's watching Vietnam footage. She goes in her kitchen, and then she starts talking on a walkie-talkie to these other two guys, and they never have any sort of introduction at this point. And so you're like, who's this girl who clearly is taking care of her dad and then has these two guy best friends? And they're like, come on, you have to come out tonight. And, convince her to come out. And then at the same time, there's 3 jocks in Letterman jackets taunting a scarecrow in the middle of a cornfield.
Yeah.
And, like, speed off. And you can just tell, like, well, those guys are up to no good.
Yeah, the way that they're, like, verbally abusing a scarecrow and smashing bottles in his face. Like, you're like,
just
okay, I don't like you.
Scarecrow.
Yeah. But I really like when movies and stories introduce you to people slowly, because that's what keeps me going. I'm like, all right, well, now I want to know what's up.
Exactly. When I do feel like this movie did a really great job of setting up all the characters. So I really want to give it props for that. That worked really well.
Yeah.
And some of the characters kept you guessing for a great deal of the movie, which I liked. Yeah. So that was cool.
No big info dump at the beginning.
But yeah, no big info. It was a slow burn, if you will.
Yeah.
So then cuts to one of the guys who was on the walkie-talkie, and he's getting dressed for Halloween. And he comes out dressed as a spider, but a man. And he's like yelling at his mom, I said I wanted to be Spider-Man, not a Spider-Man. And his mom's just like, shut up and wear the costume. Or his grandma. Yeah. I'm not sure.
She's like, you should be grateful that you have one at all, basically.
Yeah.
I loved this so much because when I was 6, maybe 7, my grandmother made me a spider costume that was like a big puffy body. And then it had 2 extra legs on each side that were connected by fishing wire to my actual arms.
I love it.
So I had like 8 legs. There's a photo around here somewhere. I was the cutest dang spider you've ever seen. Even our friend Brandy would not have been afraid of me.
I kind of feel like I've seen this picture and I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is vaguely familiar.
But I was 6.
Yeah.
And this kid was like clearly 17.
Yeah.
Because they're all talking about like, oh, we need to go trick-or-treating because it's our last Halloween together. So clearly they're like
clearly
high school
they're
seniors.
about to go their separate ways. At the same time, his sister's walking around like in her robe with curlers in her hair.
Oh, classic Jenny curlers.
She walks past the bathroom and he's bent over the toilet and he's fishing poop out of the toilet. And she's like, what are you doing? And he just slams the door and is like, mind your own business.
Yeah, he's like using one of those little things you use to clean out a fish tank.
Yeah, like the little netted scooper things.
So gross.
And the whole time you're like, what is happening? But he's like prepping for Halloween. And so you're kind of like, oh, don't use...
Yeah.
Like, flaming bag of dog poop, not human feces. Whatever. Then the trio meets up. So there's Stella, we learn is her name. And she's dressed up like a witch and she looks freaking adorable. And she like drew with lipstick like a red line across her neck, like her throat had been slit. It looked terrible, but it was awesome.
And I wonder if that was a callback to the old story about the ribbon. Yeah, where she's got the red ribbon on her neck to keep her
head
just like
on.
a little subtle nod towards one that they didn't use for the plot.
I wonder. I hadn't thought about that, but that is quite possible. So then Stella and her friends, Augie and
Chuck,
who
you want to call Ted.
I really, really do. Chuck is mini Ted Mosby, for those of you who have seen How I Met Your Mother. So from this point on, I will be referring to Chuck as Ted Mosby. Probably.
Yeah, fair.
Because I did through the whole movie. He just looks like him, acts like him, dresses like him. Like, it was weird. But, like, Ted Mosby in the flashback to the college episodes where his hair's all curly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked. Anyway, and then their friend Augie is, like, this tall blonde guy. So Chuck is dressed up, Ted Mosby is dressed up like a spider. And
a Spider-Man.
A Spider-Man. And then Augie is dressed up in a clown outfit.
But not a clown.
But not a clown.
No.
He is Pierrot.
Yeah.
From, is it an opera? Pierrette and Pierrot? Because I know of them, but I don't know what it's from.
Yep, that's a little too classy for this girl who I know started the podcast off by saying homage.
Listen, I only know because there was a song about it in The Boyfriend, which is a musical starring Twiggy. It's got to be like an opera thing. I don't know.
Yeah, you can tell that he's like a little hoity-toity. Yeah. He's in a brand new house. You can tell it has like a swimming pool. It's all like tidy inside. In a like, later scene, he's going on and on about, like, some chemical in candy that's contributing to all of these, like, terrible things.
Yeah.
So you can tell he's just, like, on a whole different level than his best friend who's fishing poop out of the toilet. So.
Absolutely. Anyway, where was I going with that? I don't know. So
the scene is super awkward when he's putting on his clown outfit, too, because he's, like, standing there wearing the costume, and his mother is, like, pinning it up near the crotch. And he's like, come on, isn't it ready yet? And he's totally over it. She's like, no, the crotch is still too tight. And she's like all up in his business with like safety pins.
And he looks very uncomfortable. That's very true. So the trio meets up and they start walking down the street, talking, having a good time. And then they're like, what if he doesn't come? They're like, he does it every year. He's going to be here or whatever. And you're like, what's happening? So they have like a bag of... air quotes candy.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is.
I'm not sure. Like,
but so
something gross.
This car starts coming, and Ted Mosby's sister is in the car. And then there's the three jocks from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And she had been saying earlier that she was getting ready for a date. So she's going on a date with one of the jocks. And her name is Ruth.
Yes.
Ruthie. They drive past, and one of the jocks swipes Ted Mosby's candy bag, and they pull it in the car, and it starts to smell.
Yes.
So clearly it has some poop in it.
Whatever it is, it's stinky.
Yes. And so they freak out, and they're like, this is not okay, and like flip the car around and start to come back, and Ruth is just like, leave him alone, he's my brother, and they're just like, nah, and drive back again. And in the meantime, Ted Mosby is lighting his bag of poop on fire.
And they've been throwing eggs at Tommy.
Oh, yeah, and they were throwing
car.
eggs at the car. Yeah, his name's Tommy, sorry. And so they've been throwing eggs at his car, and they light this bag of poop on fire, and he drives back, and they throw it in the driver's side window. So he's got fire, like, in his lap, and he starts... Fire crutch. Sorry. So he starts, like... freaking out and patting at his lap, trying to put the fire out, and poop smears everywhere. He's really pissed. He crashes his car. He's very angry. The trio is gone. They are running because they know they're dead.
Oh, totally.
So they run to the drive-in movie, and they're like hiding in between cars. And Stella, goodness gracious. Stella is like hiding next to this car, and she realizes there's a dude in a car all by himself. And so she like opens the car door and like sneaks in and just like sits in his car. And he's like, what are you doing here? And then he's like, oh, you're cute. Hey, what are you doing in my car? And she's like, sorry, we're hiding. And he's like, oh, it's fine. And then her two buddies get in, and he's like, everyone out of my car. Like, it's totally fine when the girl's in there, but the second her buddies jump in, it is no longer acceptable. Yeah. So, the guy's immediately... Ted Mosby's annoying as crap and is just, like, messing with all his stuff.
Like,
what are you living in your car? There's, like, a shirt. He's like, put that down! And he, like, asks him if he can see his switchblade, and he's like, I don't have a switchblade! And then they're like, he totally has a switchblade. Like, it's the weirdest. But anyway, you're kind of... They don't really tell you anything about this dude, just that he may or may not be living in his car, and none of them know him.
Yeah, and when he was introduced during the whole, here's a montage of people who might be important later, he tells someone who asks if, like, I think the sheriff or something pulls over and asks, do you know where you're going? And he says, I'm following the harvest.
Oh, right.
Whatever that means. So you kind of get the feeling that he's a drifter who is definitely living in his car.
Yeah. I forgot about it.
But he also looks about their age. Like, he's maybe 18.
Yeah, he's probably 18 years old.
Yeah.
So the whole time he's just flirting it up with Stella, which is just adorable, I gotta say. Because she's definitely one of those girls that seems a little more unsure of herself.
Yeah.
And she's adorable. She's seriously my favorite part of this movie. But it was definitely good for her to have some guy be interested in her.
Yeah,
even though
she doesn't
her two
have
best
the
friends are
confidence that
dudes.
she deserves.
Yeah, like, I think she needed that, so it was cool. So the jocks show up and try to get everyone out of the car and hurl some racial slurs at, we find out his name is Ramon. Mm-hmm. So the fellow moviegoers are all real pissed that there's these guys standing up and yelling and ruining the movie experience for others. So this grown man comes over and he's like, "Get out!"
Yeah, get back in your car
and
get out.
basically escorts them out of the drive-in.
Mm-hmm. And as they're walking away, Tommy, the ringleader, he's kind of swaying in the way he's talking. You can tell that he's a little bit drunk because he's like, "Where are we going? Okay, let's go together." I don't know.
Yeah.
They very subtly established that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, for sure. So then he also makes some comments about Stella's mom and how she left. And so Stella takes a minute. She gets out of the car. She takes a minute and cries. And while she's gone, the dudes tell Ramon, he's like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Stella's mom left." And everyone in town kind of made a big deal about it. And she still gets sensitive. We're basically her only friends.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting because later in the movie, her other friend, not Ted Mosby, says... Augie talks about how he's not going to call his stepdad Dad. And so his dad clearly left. And that didn't cause a big deal, but her mom leaving caused a big... I don't know if it's like mom versus dad in the time period.
I think that's totally what it is. And I think that stigma still exists today a little bit.
Yeah.
Like where...
mom's leaving is a bigger deal than dad's leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
totally.
Yeah, is interesting. But I found that interesting that the fact that Augie's parents were divorced was no big deal, but her parents not being together was a big deal.
Well, and probably Augie is male.
Yeah.
And he's obviously like in a different socioeconomic class than she is. And so she's more of a target for bullying. Even though she's adorable.
Well, and we don't really know a lot about Augie's situation. Maybe his dad is still in the picture. And I got the impression she never saw her mom again.
Yeah, she just bailed.
So... that could be different as well. Well, and then to have kids make fun of you for that?
I know, right?
Horrible. So
I'm
already...
so glad I am a full-grown adult now.
Seriously.
Like, adults kind of suck a lot of the time, too. I'm regularly disgusted by some of the Facebook drama that I see, but I don't miss the evil of children.
Yes. Well, and I feel like it's more rare that adults will just bully people on a day-to-day basis. Like, they definitely get in fights, or like in a public forum, they may bully someone who's different, but it's not quite the same as every day you go to school and the same people say the same things to you over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe there are in people's circumstances who are different than mine.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky that I don't know of anyone who gets bullied. And the internet is like a whole different story.
Yeah, for sure. But that's a whole other story. So, so after they scare off the bullies, they decide they're all going to go to a haunted house. And so they show up to this haunted house. There's a hole in the fence. Ramon picks a lock.
With like a piece of a pen.
Like a piece of a pen. One of those pens that you turn upside down and the girl's clothes fall off. Belongs to Ted Mosby, of course.
Of course it belongs to the kid who had his hand in the toilet 10 minutes ago.
Right? Guy who fishes poop out of toilet definitely has a naked lady pen. That's just a given. So while they're there, they're talking about how this house belonged to this mysterious family, the Bellows, and town legend is that they had this daughter who nobody ever saw a picture of, and they would hide her in the basement. And kids would come to the house and she would tell them stories through the walls, and then the kids would mysteriously die.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone thought that she killed all of these children. And then one day she hanged herself, and end of story.
Yep, that's the sort of spooky legend surrounding the old Bellows place.
The old Bellows place.
Exactly.
So Ted Mosby and Augie run off together in the house and just like explore, and they're playing in the haunted house. And Stella and Ramon are together, and Ramon finds like a secret door that leads to this cobweb-filled basement that has like a padlock on it. Like this door was to keep something in, and you find it was Sarah's room.
Yeah.
So there's like a chair. Was there a bed?
Yeah, there was like a bed, like a rocking chair.
Bed, a rocking chair, and a little table, and it was
like
just in this cement basement.
And once again, he exhibits some interesting lockpicking skills. Oh, and the
behavior,
best is he does actually bust out a switchblade.
Yes, that was the best part. So the boys are all obsessed with this switchblade, and then he did actually have
He really
one.
had one, yeah. Because I guess if you're going to live in your car, it's best practice to keep a switchblade, I suppose.
I can agree with that. And to have protection.
Yeah, so they're having the time of their lives, discovering this cool dungeon in the basement.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot earlier when they were talking about Sarah, the daughter that hung herself. They said Sarah would tell you a story and then it would be the last story you ever hear.
Ooh, spooky.
So that's where you're like, yeah, they're trying to make it scary. It wasn't. So then, so Chuck, aka Ted Mosby, is hiding like in a closet from Augie. And through the crack in the door, he sees like a really old lady sitting on a bed in like a really nice, furnished, like new looking room. But she looks dated, like late 1800s-ish.
Yeah.
He hears what sounds like floorboards creaking, like she's coming towards him. And he like pushes up against the wall so he can't see anything anymore. And he's freaking out. He just hears like steps coming towards him. And this was definitely a tenser moment because this is kind of setting the pace for the movie. Like, you're like, oh, is it going to be like this, all creepy and scary? And then the door opens and it's Augie.
Yeah.
And the room is gone. And he's like, where's the old lady? Where's the bed? And Augie's like, what are you talking about? And so that sort of set my expectations higher than it should have.
Yeah, it was a very cool idea, too. I love that concept of you're in an old rundown house, but when you blink your eyes or open a door, something is suddenly as it was 100 years ago, brightly lit, like elegantly furnished, and some creepy old woman with a dog is glaring at you.
Yeah, and it's like all mysterious. Well, what's happening?
Yeah,
so I'm standing in a closet of like rotting wood.
Yeah,
wow. Yeah. So I liked that part, and then it went nowhere. So then they're all in the secret room, and they find the book of scary stories.
Well, so when Augie opens the door and finds Chuck, like, cowering in a closet, Chuck exhibits what I think would be my response, which is, let's GTFO. I don't want to be in this spooky house anymore.
Yes.
So they're like, come on, let's get out of here. Come on, guys. But when they call for their friends, Stella is like, no, come down here. We found something incredible. You have to see it.
So they go in the creepy basement.
Of course.
So while they're in there, Tommy, the jock who crashed his car and has been terrorizing them, shows up and locks them in the basement because there was that lock on the door. He's with Ruth, who's Ted Mosby's sister. And she's like, what are you doing? Let them out now. And he's like, no, I'm not going to let him out. What's wrong with you? And she's like fighting him about it. She's like, that's my brother. You have to let him out or I'm going to tell the chief. Like, she like threatens she's going to turn him into the police. So he, of course, opens the door and throws her inside.
Yes.
And then Augie, super cute gentleman, is like, hey, come here. We'll take care of you. It's okay.
And her little brother is like, stay away from my sister.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
But Stella has found a super creepy book on the shelf in Sarah's old bedroom.
So she, of course, decides to take it home.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah. And as she's reading from the book, like she's looking at it, she's flipping through the pages, a shadow hand comes and unlocks the door. And so they all get out and they're like, but who unlocked the door? And then they just don't care anymore.
Right? Like follow up on the weirdness, people.
No.
But I will admit,
no cares.
If I found a book that old and in that good of condition, I would 100% take it home.
I completely agree with, like, the curiosity and wanting to take it home. One whose first thought is, this book's probably haunted and is going to kill us all. No.
Yeah, and the myth is that it's written in the blood of the children that she poisoned and murdered. So all the ink is red, and it's, like, really cool. Much better than my handwriting, for example.
My chicken scratch, you should see right now.
And it's clearly like a fountain pen with, you know, all that old style stuff. But
calligraphy. I wish I could do calligraphy.
I know. I can barely sign my own name.
Right?
I'm so unused to using a pen now.
Seriously.
But yeah, I would totally take that book home, and that's what Stella does. So
they take it home. They get outside. Tommy has destroyed Ramon's car.
Yeah.
He's spray painted racial slurs on it. He's slashed all his tires. Took apart the engine. Like, it is trashed.
Yeah.
So Ramon has nowhere to stay. So Stella obviously lets him stay with her. So, which her two buddies are just like, cool, we picked up a stranger to drive in, let him sleep in your house.
Why were Chuck and Augie not offering these?
I mean, I know the 60s were a different time, but go home with one of the dudes. Why? I mean, I know he was there because he thinks Stella's cute, but just thinking about my own guy friends, I don't think they would let me take a stranger home, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there would have been a little bit more, especially being her only friends, like a little more protectiveness from the teenage boys, but there wasn't. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Let this drifter who definitely lives in his car and owns a switchblade
go sleep at Stella's house.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. He also knows how to pick locks, so let's let him sleep at Stella's house. But anyway, it's fine. Whatever. He's a nice guy. It all turns out fine. It just kind of creeps me out as a woman. Whatever.
Stella obviously has not been like listening to the true crime podcast.
Right, obviously.
To.
I stay sexy and don't get murdered. So so they go into Stella's bedroom, and it is the bedroom of my dreams.
Yes.
It is covered in old movie posters. She has this amazing typewriter and like journals and books and comic books, and seriously, the bedroom of my dreams.
Yeah.
So he starts picking up one of the comic books, which is not one that I was familiar with. It looks like some sort of horror stories. And he's like, hey, I used to read these when I was a kid. And she's like, I have every copy. And he starts reading some of the stuff she's written, and he's like, this is really good. And she's like, I can't, like, submit it to anyone. And, like, it's not done. I don't want people to read it, whatever.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. And then she just straight up kicks him out. And he looked a little disappointed, like, oh, I really do have to sleep on the couch?
Even though her dad is literally, like asleep in the recliner
stranger,
in the living room.
You have to go sleep on the couch. So he goes down in the basement, and she is upstairs alone with this book. So the book opens, and she's like looking through all the pages. They all, as we said before, have titles of the like scary story book.
Yeah, there's little
like titles, and they're all written
titles
in red.
That also appear in the actual collection of scary stories.
Yeah.
But weirdly, half the book is empty.
Yes. There's a lot of blank pages, and then she flips to one of those blank pages, and there's just a title that says Harold, and she touches it, and the ink smears. So it had just been written.
Yeah, so there's a short story called Harold.
Yes. And she starts reading it, and while she's reading it, Tommy, the jerk, comes home and sees, like, the scarecrow he was taunting earlier, and it's all creepy and has maggots crawling all over it. And he is so drunk he can't even walk straight, but managed to park his car effectively and not kill anyone. I don't know, whatever.
Well, they don't show us his journey home.
That's true. He did crash into a fence earlier, but he was, putting out a fire. So he comes home, he's really drunk, and his mom's like, are you drunk again? And he's like, what? It's Halloween. And his mom's just like, yeah, right. Like,
she's like, you should have delivered eggs.
What was the legal drinking age in the 60s? Was it 18? Because he could have been 18 and still in high school.
He probably was 18 because he enlisted at the start of the movie.
Yeah. Just thinking like that 70s show, they all get mad at Kelso because he didn't want to tell him how old he was because he had got left back in kindergarten and he'd been 18 like the whole time. And Hyde got real mad at him, like, you could have been buying us beer this whole time.
Let's see. Most states established it at 21, but some had lower minimum ages ranging from 18 to 20. So he was probably legally able to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether or not he should have been is a whole nother story. But
and definitely should not have been driving around.
Right. So anyway, he comes home drunk, and his mom is like, you're supposed to deliver eggs to somebody. They live on a big farm, huge cornfield. Somebody probably is going to build a baseball field in it at some point. So, thank you. Nod to my other favorite. So, he goes off to gather eggs at like midnight and deliver them.
Wait, hang on, back up.
Huh, what?
Did you just call that your favorite movie?
I said another one of my favorite movies. I love Field of Dreams. Do you not love Field of Dreams?
No, but I haven't seen it since I was a small child.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Does it hold up?
I love it. But I love any sports movies.
This is true.
And I love... But James Earl Jones is fabulous in that movie.
Okay, I'll give it another try.
It's fun. It's a fun movie.
Is it funny?
Yes.
Okay.
James Earl Jones is hilarious.
Okay. I didn't remember it being funny, probably because all the jokes went over my head as a kid.
Maybe. But like, because Kevin Costner starts hearing voices and they tell him to go find this author. And he like tracks down this guy who doesn't give interviews. He doesn't talk to people. And he like is freaking out that Kevin Costner showed up on his doorstep and he's like yelling at him. And it's fantastic.
Okay. I'm going to watch it this weekend.
All right.
Carry on.
Don't hate
Sorry.
Because then I'll feel bad.
I just found that a little bit shocking and needed to make sure that I understood the full picture.
No. I love Field of Dreams.
Okay.
I'm sorry if you don't.
Don't apologize to me unless you just tricked me into watching a horrible movie and I waste 2 hours of my weekend.
That's what I'm afraid you're going to think of it. But I'm not the only person who loves this movie, so it's not like some others I've made you watch.
I'll report back next podcast. So anyway, back to the cornfield. With the scarecrow in it.
So he goes into the barn to gather eggs, and definitely the shadowy figure that let everyone out of the basement shows up and is kind of hovering above him in the barn. And then, so he's in the barn, which is where I would think you would gather eggs. And then for some reason, he's walking through the cornfield.
I assumed he was walking it to the neighbors that he was supposed to be delivering eggs to.
Maybe that's it. Okay. Because, there's no explanation about that. He's just suddenly in the cornfield.
Yeah.
So he's walking through the corn, which is never a good idea for anyone to walk through a cornfield at night. Like, it is just creepy all on its own. Maybe I watched The Stand too many times. But I don't...
No such thing.
Yeah. I do not appreciate a dark cornfield. So he's walking through the cornfield.
Maybe because he's drunk or maybe because of magic, he seems to be lost in the cornfield. Because he passes the same scarecrow a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then, like, the third time that he comes upon it, the post is empty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and by this time, Stella's reading the book.
She's reading the story,
She's reading the story. So you're kind of hearing or watching her read the story as you're seeing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it talks about how there's a boy named Tommy who was scared of this scarecrow his whole life and hated it and whatever. And then, like, it comes to life and it's chasing him and this is all happening. So this scarecrow, I feel like we need to kind of describe this guy. He's like a bloated, dead body.
Yep, pretty much.
In a flannel shirt with maggots crawling in and out of his face.
Yep, it's the most disgusting scarecrow you've ever seen.
And it's like in half. So there's a big hole where his stomach should be, and you can just see through it. Like, as he's walking through the cornfield, you can see the cornfield through his stomach.
And the way they made him look in the movie was clearly directly inspired by Stephen Gamel's illustration for the short story Herald. So if you, like me, have the books in your house, go get them. It's in the third one, and look at the illustration because they nailed it. Yeah.
It works really well. Except it doesn't. It's kind of like, because when you first see it, you're like, ooh, that's creepy. And it looks like that picture. And it kind of works. But then it starts like moving and it just feels really cartoony.
That's what made me think of the Goosebumps stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just wasn't done very well. So it's kind of cartoony. And he's like chasing Tommy through the cornfield. Tommy trips over a pitchfork. Picks it up, tries to stab the scarecrow through its empty hole. Surprised that doesn't do anything. And the scarecrow grabs it and stabs Tommy with it.
Yeah.
So then Tommy kind of starts running away again. And then he starts like choking and straw starts coming out of his mouth. And then just coming out of everywhere. Out of his ears, out of his neck, out of his eyes, out of everywhere. Straw just coming out of everywhere. And that bit was disturbing. Especially the gagging noises. And
that was kind of an improvement, in my opinion, on the ending from the original short story.
Yeah. What was the ending of the original? Remind me.
So the two guys who have been like abusing the Herald Scarecrow the whole time, they leave the creepy hut that they've been hanging out in, and one of them's like, oh no, we left our milking stools behind, and And so one of them goes back for the stools and never returns. And when his friend, who's too scared to go after him, looks back at the hut, he sees the scarecrow on the roof stretching out a big piece of dead person's skin and drying it. Which is definitely, like, kind of scary. But I love the irony of Harold the Scarecrow turning someone else into a scarecrow.
Yes.
And then presumably, I don't know, getting to walk around as a man.
Right. Like, it never really tells you what happens to Harold, but then it shows Tommy, who looks an awful lot like Harold, but with his Letterman jacket hanging on the post.
Yeah. So maybe Harold's free now.
Right. Maybe Harold gets to move on to another better place.
I like that.
Except he killed someone.
Okay,
so it depends on your version of
place.
how the afterlife works.
Yeah.
But so Stella is freaked out. She starts telling her best friends about it. And Augie's like, don't worry about it. It's just a book. But Stella's still worried. So she and Ramon go to the cornfield. And all the cops are there because Tommy has now disappeared. So the cops are all conducting an investigation. And Ramon's like, they can't see me. Because when he went to get his car fixed, the cops came and they were like, who are you? Why are you here? And, asking him too many questions. He's like, the cops can't find me. And they never really explain. And so you're like, what is Ramon's deal?
Yeah. You now get the feeling that he's not just living in his car by choice. He's on the run from something.
He's on the run from something for sure. And the cops can't find him. So they kind of sneak through the cornfield and they see Tommy as the scarecrow. So Stella's like, yep, this book is haunted and it killed Tommy, and takes the book back.
Yeah. Good choice, Stella.
Yeah. But then she comes back home and Ramon is waiting for her because he's going to sleep on her couch again, I guess. They never really talk about it, but he's there waiting for her. And he is in her room reading the book. And she's like, where did you get that? And he's like, what are you talking about? It was just sitting here on your desk. So she's like, no, I took it back to the haunted house. And he's like, no, it was sitting here on your table. So then she's like, crap. It followed me home again.
Yeah.
This is not okay. So they open it up. She starts telling him about how the book was writing itself, and it starts writing a new story called The Toe, which I'm going to go ahead and say is my least favorite story in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books collection of stories. It always was, except for maybe the hearse one, because that one, I don't know. But then I just sing the hearse song, so.
It's pretty disgusting.
But it's pretty gross.
Super gross.
So the concept of the story is that a woman is digging a kid is digging in his garden, finds a toe, and just pulls on it really hard, and then takes it inside, and they all eat it for dinner, and then this woman comes looking for her toe. This, dead corpse woman.
Yeah.
So basically that's what happens in the movie. But why is that even a thing?
Yeah.
Why would
you eat the toe?
You find a toe in your garden, pull on it, and then take it inside, and your parents are like, cool, let's eat it.
Yeah.
I know. Nothing about this is okay. Anyway. So Augie is home by himself. He's talking on the phone with his mom. This is when he says, I'm not going to call him dad. And he says something like, have fun with Ron. I don't remember what the guy's name is. He's like, no, I'm not going to call him dad. And then he's like, yes, I can feed myself. And then he's like, there's stew in the fridge. And then you're just hearing one side of the conversation. And he's like, well, if you didn't make it, somebody did. He's just going to eat this mystery stew. And he doesn't even care. So he doesn't even heat it up. He's just eating cold stew. And so Stella's trying to get him on the walkie-talkie, and she's like, don't eat anything. And he's like, what are you talking about? And takes a big old bite of stew. And then he's like, oh my gosh, there's a toe in here, and spits it out. And then he realizes that Stella's telling him the truth, that something weird is happening and he shouldn't be eating the stew. And then it all goes quiet because a person, corpse/body type thing, starts materializing in the end of his hallway. So he runs and hides. And so Stella and Ramon are running over to his house. They're like, he only lives 2 blocks away, and just start booking it over there. And he, in the meantime, is running from this weird shadowy thing that materializes into a corpse woman at the end of his hall. with 9 toes. So he's hiding in a bedroom and he tries to get out the window. The window won't open, so he hides under the bed. And this scene, the person was so cartoony. The corpse person was so cartoony. Corinne and I chuckled. It was kind of laughable.
Yeah.
So the tension that could have been there wasn't really there.
But case in point for, again, we're not the right audience. This
Right.
is the scene that sent our friend's 11-year-old kid, like, packing.
Right.
So.
And as she's coming down the hall, it wasn't very scary, but you hear her, like, stepping down the hall, and then the door creaks open, and then it just goes completely silent. And then the tension in this part was really good for me. Mm-hmm. This is where my half star came in. Because it got really good and tense, where you're like, it just got deadly quiet. And something about just, like, complete silence and stillness is creepy to me.
Oh, totally.
And so there was definitely just that super calm silence where, you know, he had heard this like thump, 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 and then the door creaking and then just nothing. And so he starts looking around and he's like waiting for footprints. Nothing happens. He starts sliding out from under the bed, like maybe I'm safe. And he like tries to peer up the end of the bed onto the bed and there's nothing there. And he kind of starts to relax a little and then he gets pulled under the bed.
Yeah.
So that all worked really well. But
And
then
he
as he gets... And he left, claw marks as he gets pulled under the bed.
Yeah.
Then you see her under the bed, and then it wasn't scary anymore.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer.
But I do love the claw marks on the floor.
Yeah, the claw marks on the floor and the dead silence all worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this movie did a lot better with the non-visual scary parts.
Yeah.
You know?
And we've talked about that before, like with Darkness Falls, about how it was pretty unusual for seeing her to not completely destroy the scare. The way that, because usually that's
what does it,
yeah.
and that's what did it. So, so Stella and Ramon get there. They find the claw prints, and Stella is freaking out because her bestie Augie is gone.
Yeah,
and it's a bummer because he was the good one, and you're like, why didn't they kill off Ted Mosby? He's all annoying and pervy, and we had that moment. So Augie is gone. So Stella makes Ted Mosby and his sister come meet them somewhere, and she tells them about the book and everything that happens. And they don't believe her, and she's like, Augie's gone. And they're like, but where is he? And she's like, he's gone. Like, he's just gone. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the sister, Ruth, pretty quickly is like, and she's like, we were all in the house. We're all, like, gonna get that, like, something's gonna happen. And Ruth is just like, I don't believe you. You guys are just playing another Halloween prank. I'm out, and leaves. She's like, I'm going to play tonight. I got to go. So, Augie's like,
Chuck.
Well, let's... Chuck. Sorry. Augie's gone. Didn't mean to bring up that. Sad. So, Chuck, is like, well, let's set it on fire. It worked in Salem.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite line. So they put it in a big barrel and set it on fire and nothing happens.
Yeah, it just doesn't burn.
Doesn't burn at all.
Which,
so they're just like, how do we kill this thing?
It totally reminds me of another urban legend that didn't make it into the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, people used to talk all the time about Ouija boards and people trying to like throw them away or burn them in a fire, and they would always find them on their pillow, or like they'd hear a knock on the door and there'd be a Ouija board on their porch again.
So I'm still nervous about Ouija boards. There were enough legends of those growing up. I'm not doing it.
Have never used one.
Yeah.
Will never use one. Yeah.
I feel like if anybody would have got me to use one, it would have been you, and you were scared enough of them that I'm like, okay, if Corinne won't even, you know what I mean? Like, nope. Yep.
Pretty much.
Because you like read my tarot cards, which are not the same level as a Ouija board, but like I feel like you were more into like the mystical, like communication with the other side sort of thing. And so I was like, well, if Corinne's not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, because it's a whole other level. Yeah,
because tarot cards aren't necessarily like communicating with the dead. It's just like channeling energy for divination.
Things. Yeah.
And Ouija boards have one purpose.
Yes.
And I know that it was made by friggin' Parker Brothers to be a game.
And it's just a game.
But that's even scarier, because it's like the things that you don't expect to happen. And, like, it's just this innocuous little doll, and now it's the world's worst demon or whatever.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Ouija boards are not for me. Or Corinne. So they decide they need to do research on Sarah Bellows because it's the only way they're going to learn how to kill her.
Yeah. If they can't destroy the book, they got to figure out what else is going on.
Exactly. Which is a pretty typical scary movie thing, right?
Oh, yeah. It's scary movies, episodes of
learn
Supernatural,
the backstory.
Whatever. Yeah.
It's the only way to get through us. We had to learn the backstory. So they go to the public library and they find, like, there are just no pictures of Sarah anywhere, which is part of the legend. There's no pictures of her. Nobody knows what she looks like. So within a year of Sarah hanging herself, her whole family disappears.
Yeah.
Like they talk about how her dad ran a successful paper mill, but then he was just gone. And then they find all of their stories in the book. There's a story about all of them.
Yeah.
Every member of her family.
Which
so
I wasn't expecting that. To be honest, and I loved it.
I kind of liked it too. Yeah. I liked that about this. But then a new story starts, and it's called The Red Spot, and it talks about a girl named Ruth who had a spider bite on her face. And Ruth had been talking about a zit earlier in the movie and how her brother, like, caused her to have zits by stressing her out by being so annoying. So she had this big zit on her face. She had to go to the play. So then it shows her getting ready for the play, and this thing is huge. And
it looks like one of those awful, impossible to pop pimples because it's like too deep and too round, and you worry it to death and end up like breaking your own blood vessels.
Yes. So it's just huge. And they're like getting ready for the play. She's sitting at the makeup counter, and the girl sitting next to her is like, "You have got to take care of that." Gross. It's nasty and it's huge, and she's about to go on stage where everything is visible. So she goes to the bathroom, which, like, she's sitting in front of a mirror. Maybe she wanted some privacy to pop her zit. I don't know.
That's what I think, because that other girl is like, dang, take care of that, you know? Like, I'd totally be like, okay.
That's probably true. Okay, I'm going to go do this by myself.
Especially if it's that gigantic, like, you know.
Yeah. I just made a noise.
It was just a bug dragging across the table.
So great. So she goes into the high school bathroom, which high school bathrooms are creepy enough by themselves. And it's like partially lit for some reason. And she stands in front of the mirror, and her zit has gotten like 8 times the size it was before this.
In the space of 5 minutes.
Huge.
Which I feel like sometimes happens in real life.
For sure.
Like you blink and it's gigantic.
But not this huge. Like, at this point, it's like the size of a golf ball coming out of her face. And it looks so painful. And she's like touching it. You can tell it hurts.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's getting redder and redder.
So a little black, what looks like could maybe be a hair comes out. And you're like, and then it starts moving on its own. And you're like, nope.
Definitely.
And I remember this story, because isn't that basically the story So I remember this story, and I am so terrified of spiders, and I can't even handle it. And so, like, a swarm of spiders comes crawling out of this girl's face hole where her zit used to be. And so many spiders, like hundreds of them, just comes crawling out of her face. This is my worst nightmare. Corinne was hiding her face. I was trying to like watch and see what was happening, but it was real hard. I can't even watch Harry Potter 2. This was very difficult for me. So I can't, there's a rule in my house that if somebody else sees a spider, they have to kill it and not tell me about it. And like when Jessica lived with me, she would all the time just be like, Jill, don't look. And I would just close my eyes and she would take care of it and then it would just be gone. I didn't have to see it. But most of the time, she just had to not tell me it was happening because
then
I can't
you
handle
start
it.
Thinking about all the other spiders that were keeping that one company.
Listen, I feel like you and I have had this conversation. Everyone else makes fun of me. You can't kill a spider because then all his mafia spider friends are going to come retaliate on you.
They do watch. Well, and someone told me once, they're like, well, if you see a spider, that's the only spider in the area because they're territorial. And I'm like, what frickin' universe are you living in? Because that's not the rules that my house follows.
No.
Like, I don't want to talk about it.
Nope. I don't want you to talk about it or I can't come over here anymore.
The upstairs is fine.
Okay.
And we got new windows in the basement. Ever since we replaced the windows, it's been fine.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up in that basement...
Oh, I remember when you got the bug net.
Yes,
and we woke up in the middle of the night and they were on the... Nope.
Yeah, it was arachnophobia in this house.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, mine was the same way. Since my mom listens to this podcast, how many times, Mom, did you find me sleeping on the couch because I came home and there were spiders in my bed and I couldn't sleep in it?
Oh, I do remember there being spiders in your bed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my dad never believed me. He was like, you're crazy. Full of crap. There's no spiders, because he sleeps in the basement too and he wouldn't see them. But they say you see things you're like... I was actively looking for them because I was terrified of them. But they would just be like sitting on my pillow. They were totally messing with me. And he never believed me. And then when I moved out, I moved in with you and Kelly. And we were like taking apart my bed. And we pulled the mattress off the box springs. And there was all kinds of spiders in between.
Ew!
And my dad was finally like, there were spiders in here.
They were
and I was
hatching
just like,
under your bed.
No! Yeah, not okay. Anyway... Spiders are not okay.
So this scene, if you haven't gathered from our conversation...
Horrifying! This is what got the whole star all for itself. So spiders are crawling out of her face. She's sitting on the bathroom floor as spiders are crawling all over her and just biting her. And she is just screaming. So Stella and the boys have come to find her because they were reading the story about her, and they find her in the bathroom and her brother's like freaking out and Ramon's trying to like beat them off her with his coat.
But there's just too many.
Ted Mosby runs out in the hall, grabs a bucket of water, comes back in, splashes her with a bucket of water, which like washes him off, and he like grabs her and pulls her out of the bathroom. She is a mess. Like she just cannot stop crying and screaming. And they take her off in an ambulance.
And the sheriff says later that she's in an asylum for the rest of her life. Which Jill and I were like...
I feel like you can't make that assumption after 12 hours.
No.
Maybe she will figure it out and be just fine.
Yeah.
She's in an asylum for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So she goes off in the ambulance. While they were at the library researching about Sarah, they found out that she had some... servants, is that the right word?
Yeah, so there was an article that said that right after Sarah hung herself, the family dismissed the housekeeper and her daughter because they believed that the housekeeper was teaching Sarah voodoo magic. So that kind of gives them a lead on where they could go to get more information about Sarah.
Yeah, so they go find this Lulu Baptiste woman.
Yeah.
And she is... real old.
Yeah, she's at least like 80.
Yeah. She looked 110.
Mm-hmm.
So real old, blind. They go in to talk to her. She doesn't say a word. She's just sitting there being really, really old at them. And so Stella picks up like a music box and starts playing with it. And it plays that hearse song. Don't you ever laugh as the hearse goes by.
And it's the same music box that she had found in Sarah's room in the basement of the Bellows house.
Ah,
and on the basement of the one in Sarah's house, it said SB for Sarah Bellows. And this one says LB for Lulu Baptiste.
Ah.
And so I wonder if they were like little girls around the same time. Because Lulu, when her mom got dismissed, she was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like she looked like she was 8 years old or something.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So maybe... her mom gave them both a present or something.
Mm-hmm. I get the impression they were friends.
Yeah.
From later in the movie.
Yeah.
So they start singing and she goes, she loved that song. Sarah loved that song. And then she's like, I felt so bad for Sarah, the way they treated her.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lulu says, stories hurt, stories heal. And then they find out Sarah died. Oh, and then she starts kind of freaking out. And her granddaughter comes in and is like, sorry, sometimes this happens. You guys just need to go. And then she's like, it's horrible what happened to that girl in the hospital. And they're like, what do you mean in the hospital? I thought she died at home. And she's like, no, she died at the hospital. So then they were like, hey, hospitals keep records.
Yes.
Let's go to the hospital. Which I'm really glad the way this scene worked out. Because they walk in and they're like, hey, we want to see your hospital records. And the nurse is like, no.
We don't just give those out like candy.
A lot of times in movies, I work with medical records. You don't just give those to people.
Yeah.
Ever. There's all kinds of laws protecting it. Maybe there weren't in the 60s, but still, the nurse was like, no. And then they're like, we want some for a patient. She's like, real old, like 100 years ago.
Yeah, for a school project.
For a school project, yeah. And she's like, cool, fill out this form. It can take up to 6 weeks.
Yeah. Ooh. And right before they decided to come to the hospital to get the records, Chuck, aka Ted Mosby, he was telling them about a nightmare that he was worried Sarah was going to use against him somehow. And it's pretty influenced by that woman, I think, that he saw when he was hiding in the closet, because the wallpaper in that house was all red, like bright red. So he's explaining that he has a nightmare that she comes into his room and tells him, stay out of the red room. It's an evil place and bad things happen there.
Yes.
So as they're talking to the hospital administrative staff and they're asking about the medical records, this one doctor's like, oh, like 100 years ago, those old records are in the red room.
And so Ted Mosby's like, I can't go there.
No.
So they all sneak into the hospital, obviously. And
Yeah,
so
of
Chuck's like, no, I'm not going with you. And then they say, yeah, it's in the red room. It spells out like records, something department,
Records and evaluation depot.
Something like that. So it spells out red.
Yeah.
So it's not that the room itself is the color red. It's just called the red room.
And Chuck's still like, nope.
Nope, not going. Yeah, so he's like, I will keep watch. Which he does not do. But whatever. So he stays to keep watch. And Ramon and Stella go off. So Chuck stays to keep watch, kind of freaks out and runs up on the roof. Like, I got the impression he kind of had a panic attack and needed some fresh air. So he goes up on the roof and gets stuck on the roof. The door locks itself, as some roofs do, and he can't get back in. So there's like, the hospital looks like it's like 2 separate wings. And so there's like a walkway in between. So there's some doctors on the walkway, and he just walks across the walkway and goes in the other door. And the doctors are like, what are you doing here? And he just doesn't say a word and keeps walking. And so they chase him down. They're like, you're not supposed to be here, and start chasing him through the hospital. And then he hides from them. They don't find him. He then gets trapped in this hallway. And the shadowy hand thing starts appearing again. And this part was just terrible. So, for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
So,
I couldn't even watch this whole part.
Yeah. So the lights start flashing, and then it all turns red. And it turns red, and this woman appears, materializes. That's the word I'm looking for. And it's like this really weird looking heavyset woman. And she has like a very cartoony face with a huge mouth.
And like black fingers.
Yeah.
She moves strangely.
She like, it looks like she's struggling to walk. And her face is this weird, huge smile and this mouth that is way too big for her head. And so she starts walking at him, and he's like freaking out, starts trying to run down another hall, and then she's on that hall. He turns around and tries to run down another hall, and she's in that hall. So no matter which direction he turns, there she is. And she's just slowly coming at him as the lights are red. And then it kept flashing. But it would, like, lull you into a false sense of security, and I would be like, hey, Corinne, you can watch now, and then all of a sudden, flash.
Yeah.
Like,
so I had to hide behind my notebook.
So she just hid for this whole scene, because it would just flash at random parts, and you wouldn't know when it was going to happen, and anyway. So, it probably only flashed, like, 4 times, but it was, like, every time Corinne tried to look.
Well, and even when it wasn't flashing, the shade of red...
was really
so offensive
weird
to the eyes. It was, like, uncomfortably red.
And it, like, made everything look weirder.
Yeah.
So, the 3 women, all one woman, all come upon Chuck, and, like, weirdly, this woman, like, all becomes one, and then just hugs him, and then just absorbs him.
Yeah.
And she's got this huge grin on her face. Real weird.
Yeah. Sounds
not creepy, just weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the whole time you're just like, what is... Oh. Ew. Okay.
But Chuck is gone.
But Chuck is gone. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Kind of sad.
But while that was happening, as per usual, the book was writing itself another story.
Yes. And Ramon and Stella are in the basement. They walk past this abandoned wheelchair, which I kind of was hoping would tie into something. It didn't, but it looked creepy.
It was just there being scary.
Yeah, like those really old wheelchairs that you see in like abandoned insane asylums. It looked like it was really cool looking. Nothing, not important at all. So they go to the red room. They find out Sarah suffered from, I didn't write down the whole thing, but basically they said albinism, which just means she had really blonde hair and was sensitive to the light.
Yeah,
like
she
really
just
light
didn't have
eyes,
melanin
really
in
white
her
skin.
skin.
Yeah.
So it's not a mental health condition at all.
So as they say it, you're like, she had what now? Why were they hiding her in the basement? Why was she crazy? Why, like it doesn't make any sense.
And that they treated her with like electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
And all the classic terrifying things.
Like all kinds of stuff. She was basically tortured. And a doctor was her brother. So then they find a wax cylinder. And Ramon is like, hey, I've seen one of these before. You have to find like a player and it'll play the wax cylinder, which they used to record voices on. So they're recording a therapy session where her brother is like, just say you hurt the children. And she's like, no, I didn't do it. And then she's like, I was trying to save them. Mm-hmm. The water from the plant has too much mercury in it and it's poisoning them. And he's like, no, tell the truth. And he's like torturing her, trying to get her to say she hurt the children instead of the mill hurt the children.
Yeah. So he's protecting the family business.
Yeah.
And she's the scapegoat.
And then all of a sudden Sarah's voice changed, which I liked this.
Yeah.
It just changed and it got like all raspy and scary sounding. And she starts telling the story of Charlie in the red room.
Yes.
So Ramon and Stella are like, aw, crap, Chuck's in trouble, and run out and try and find him. All they find is his naked lady pin.
Yeah.
And he's gone. So they know he's gone. It's very sad. So at this point...
Oh, the hospital staff who's been looking for Chuck runs in and finds them. And is like, where's your little friend?
Yeah, and they're just like, no.
Yeah. So they get arrested.
So they get arrested. She calls her dad and has kind of an emotional conversation with her dad where she's like, Dad, I might disappear. Just know it wasn't because I don't love you. And like this whole big thing, like I might die tonight, all this stuff. And he's like, what are you talking about? Where are you? I will come and get you. Like any good parent would. Like, you're clearly concerned. Let me help you. And she's just like, no, you can't. And hangs up the phone. Like her poor dad must just be going crazy.
Like literally mad with worry.
Yes. So she's in the police station. They find out Ramon is a draft dodger. So he was supposed to go to Vietnam, and then we find out his brother died in Vietnam, and they send him home in pieces.
Yeah.
So he didn't want that to happen to him, and he says, I don't want Sarah to use that against me.
Yeah, because he's worried people think he's a coward.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of get the feeling that she definitely does use things against them, like the Red Room business.
Yes, absolutely. So then they're put in neighboring jail cells and hold hands through the bars. It's very precious. And then the police chief finds the book and he starts looking at the book and the lights go out. And his dog starts growling at what I thought was a wall, but turned out to be a fireplace.
Uh-huh.
So he's growling at the fireplace and Ramon starts freaking out and he's like, oh no, it's the jangly man.
Yeah. And he's like, it's a campfire
when I was little. Yeah. So ridiculously, a head falls out of the chimney.
This was a pretty silly moment.
So silly. And then it said, what did it say? It said something weird when it came out.
Me Tai Do Ti Walker.
Yeah. So the head falls out of the chimney and says, Me Tai Do Ti Walker. Cool. So then other body parts start falling from the chimney.
Like a leg and an arm.
And an arm. And they all start coming together to form a very disfigured human who walks backwards. Like,
it looked like something that would have been in Silent Hill.
Yes.
Like if you've ever played Silent Hill 2, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was all demony. He came running at him backwards and started trying to get to Ramon. Kills the sheriff. Police chief. They kept calling him chief. Kills the police chief. Conveniently drops the sheriff's body right in front of Stella's jail cell. Goes after Ramon next door. So
and he's calling him coward, too.
Yeah,
so
he's calling him coward.
100% using it.
Totally using everything against him and taunting him.
Yeah.
Plus, he came in pieces. Like his brother got sent back in pieces.
I didn't even connect that.
I kind of put that together. Stella gets the keys off the guard, gets them both out of their jail cells, and they run. And they take the cop's keys, and they're going to steal his car. And then Ramon's like, you have to take the book back. And he's like, stop her, and you stop this. And then takes off in the car, and he's like, he'll chase me, it's fine. So the whole time he's like battling with this jangly man, and he's like climbing all over the car and trying to get in, like bashing windows, all kinds of stuff. He gets on the front of the car, and Ramon crashes into like a big, huge truck and like pins him, and then gets out and starts running. And the guy, like, all the jangly man, all of his pieces, like, come apart, and he wiggles out, and then they all come back together, and he starts chasing him again.
Terminator style.
Terminator style, for sure. So, extremely, like, liquefy, necessarily. Yeah. So, Stella goes back to the house. She tries to talk to Sarah. The music box starts playing again, the Hearst song. And the house lights up and is all new again, just like when Chuck saw it. And people are looking for Sarah. Sarah, where are you? And Stella's running around, ends up in front of a mirror and sees that she is Sarah.
Yeah.
And so she runs into Lulu, and Lulu's like, hide under here, and like points to under the dining room table.
Yeah, like little girl version of Lulu.
Yeah. So she hides under the dining room table, and she's just freaking out.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Ramon has come back to the house.
Yes.
And when he walks in at the foot of the stairs, everything's still old and dilapidated to him. And Sarah's book is at the bottom of the stairs, right where when Stella had just walked in, it evaporated out of her hands.
Mm-hmm. And it says the haunted house. Yeah. And it's telling this story about Sarah and the haunted house. Mm-hmm. Or Stella and the haunted house. Sorry. So he's like running around the house yelling for her, trying to find her, and the jangly man is chasing him the whole time.
Yeah. And he finds her glasses.
And they're all covered in dust and broken.
Like they've been there a really long time.
Yeah.
So that's when I finally put together, like, okay, she's in the past. It took me probably longer than it should have to put that together.
Well, and it was interesting because there was a moment where they were both hiding in the bedroom and they were standing at the exact same door. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of where I was like, okay, well, they're in different dimensions or something.
Yeah.
So he finds her really old glasses, and just then people come into the dining room to find Stella/Sarah. And
it's a pair of men.
Yes.
One of whom I assume is her brother.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is they're talking to each other, and one of the brothers calls the other Harold.
Oh, I hadn't thought that.
And earlier they were talking about how there was like a story for each person in the family.
Yeah.
So it made me wonder if the original Scarecrow was her brother, and that was his comeuppance.
Interesting.
So,
I'm gonna assume it is. Little clever twist, because there's been enough little things. So sure, I like that. But they were saying we have to catch her. She's been telling people about the water.
Yeah.
And so they come upon Lulu, and they're like, "Have you seen Sarah?" And she's like, "No, I haven't." And you hear them kind of drag her off, and she's crying. Like you get the impression,
she's getting beaten
or something, which is not okay. And that was really hard to hear. And then they find Sarah/Stella under the table, and they drag her off, throw her in the basement, and lock her in.
And turn out the lights.
Her
sister's like, you don't deserve the light.
Yeah.
I assume sister. I don't know any.
Just horrible. Yeah. They say there was all her family, so I would assume sister. So Ramon starts yelling to Stella, tell her the truth. And so Sarah like materializes in the basement, and Stella starts telling her, like, you realize that you've become the monster everyone said you were, right? So it's interesting. It's sort of like It Chapter 2, where they defeat him with being bullies. Like,
you guys are missing some pretty heavy eye rolls from Jill right now.
My sass is strong right now. So she like convinces her, you've become the thing you hate. Like, we didn't do anything wrong, and you're torturing us for no reason just because we found your book. Like, you've become the monster they said you all are. You're killing people just like they said you did. And then she's like, I'll tell your story. I promise I'll tell your story. I'll tell everyone that you didn't do anything wrong. The water was poison, everything. And Sarah hands her the pen, and she's like, hands her this pen and says, use your blood.
Yeah.
So the book, like, has reappeared in the basement, and she pricks herself with the pen and
With a
uses
cool old
it,
fountain pen.
and starts writing Stella's story. Like, Stella wasn't a monster, Stella blah, 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 blah. And it was like, the way she was writing it, I hope that's not how she kept it in the end, but whatever. So she's like writing this story and just laying out all the facts. And Stella's like, let it go, Sarah, just let it go. Which, I'm sorry, in 2019, you just can't say that phrase. Because
it's forbidden now.
everyone will just sing the song. So she's like, you just have to let it go. And in my head, I'm immediately Elsa and making an ice castle. So anyway, she does it. Everything stops. The jangly man starts trying to eat Ramon. He comes and finds Stella. So Stella starts saying her speech again. Stories hurt, stories heal. If we repeat them often enough, they become real. They make us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So
again, I love that.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So Stella publishes an article about Sarah and what really happened, and she's walking down the halls of high school, and she's like, I'm still in high school. Some people leave me, some people don't, but I did it. I told the truth, whatever. Mm-hmm. Ramon reports for duty, shows up for the bus, joins all the other soldiers. Stella says, I'll write you every day. So, anyway.
Jill has strong feelings about this. Because you don't believe she'll follow through with it. She'll do that thing where you write them every day for like 2 weeks and then you sort of forget to write them ever again.
Growing up the way I did, men ship off for 2 years when they're about that age. And all the, will you wait for me? And all the women are like, I'll wait for you forever. None of them do.
No,
it's all
6 months
garbage.
Later, it's a Dear John letter.
Yeah, like... Yes, it happens. Some people end up with that person. Great. Happy for you. I just don't think you should make promises you don't know if you can keep or not. That's all.
That's true, man.
Plus, they've known each other like 3 days.
And we all know this is like the thing that gets you the most.
Yes.
Not that it shouldn't or anything. It's just one of those things I watch for in movies now, the 10-minute romances.
Yes. They spent like 3 days together. Granted, they went through this whole like life-altering experience.
Yeah.
So that'll probably bond them a little more. But anyway, whatever. She's 16. It's not going to last. So Stella and her dad, then it cuts to Stella and her dad, and they have Ruthie in the back seat. And she's giving this whole mental speech about how the book still has them, but they're never going to stop looking for Augie and Chuck within the book.
Yeah, so Ruthie presumably is fine because Sarah stopped tormenting her, I guess.
Maybe. Or the chief really was full of crap and she just got over the spider thing?
Yeah.
With some heavy medications? Who
knows?
The
nice scar on her cheek from where they all burst out.
Yeah. Ugh.
But it did it left the door pretty wide open for a sequel because the movie ends with them driving away on a highway to go find a way to... But I'm like, where are they going, though?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to go hunt down magical objects?
How are they doing that?
Reverse a curse?
Where are they going? They're, like, driving on a mountain road, which they're, like, hadn't been a mountain road yet. So where were they going? What were they doing? None of these things were answered.
What lead are they following?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So just off they go, searching for people who disappeared into a book.
Which is an interesting enough premise to me that if they make a sequel where they are trying, like, where somehow they're maybe able to, like, I'm going to watch that movie.
Yeah.
I totally will.
I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Well, and this really was, so this movie was enjoyable enough for me just based on nostalgia factor. Mm-hmm. And I loved enough of I didn't love any of the monsters. I didn't find any of them scary, but I loved the characters and I loved the story.
The storytelling was
solid. The way everything tied in and the way they presented it. It was a little bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but it worked.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So...
not scary.
No.
But a good story.
Yeah.
So
a good adventure story, as we like
exactly
to say.
Right. Yeah, I kept thinking that the whole time. So Kelly's going to love it when he watches it. Yeah,
yes. But all in all, I would prefer to keep the scary stories that tell in the dark in my memory where Mike used to act them out and tell them to us in his amazing, like, animated storytelling abilities. Like... I'm just going to keep it that way in my head.
I do recommend that people who were frightened by these stories not reread them unless you're rereading them to a child for the joy of seeing them get scared.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, have you in recent memory told anyone the story of the hook? Do you remember that story?
Not seriously. I can't remember the last time we had that conversation.
Yeah, but it was like the classic campfire tale where there's like the guy with the hook hand, blah, blah, blah. They made all those I Know What You Did Last Summer movies about it and stuff.
Yes.
But they're all like that, where they're, like 1,000 words or less. They're really, really short. There's not a lot of substance there. And it's something that scared the bejesus out of me as a kid, and reading them as an adult, they do nothing for me except for destroy that memory. So leave them in the past unless you're carrying that torch forward and passing it along to scare someone else.
Pick up the books and look at the pictures.
Oh, for sure.
Because the pictures still to this day will give you nightmares. They are haunting.
Yeah.
Hauntingly beautiful, but haunting.
Yeah, they released new versions with updated illustrations by someone different, and people rioted, and the publisher had to re-release the originals. So
yep, that's not okay. The illustrations are the best part, for sure.
Yeah, and especially if you watch this movie, definitely look at the illustrations, because they really honored the source material. They did a very good job with that.
Yep.
So yeah, that was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Hopefully you enjoyed listening to us talk about it.
Indeed. I enjoyed talking about it with you. Yay! And I'm on a sugar high that's going to crash in 5, 4, 3, 2. Thanks for listening to Scream Girl Squad, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.